Skiing, man. Skiing. I just got back from skiing, and skiing is happiness. Dude, it brings me an immense amount of joy. I cannot describe how much I enjoy skiing. Skiing with my friends, skiing by myself, with music, with podcasts. Skiing is so much fun, and it brings me so much joy. And I didn't even know about skiing until 2 years ago. It was this source of joy that I didn't even know about a couple years ago. Not only that, but it is expensive and I'm cheap. I would not have started this hobby if I didn't just meet people who just happen to drag me into it and say, "You're skiing now." That I think is life. We run into people and they go, "Hey, have you tried this?" And maybe we luck out and find things that bring us an immense amount of joy. Maybe it's hobbies, maybe it's a relationship, maybe it's our job. And it seems like we just stumble into some stuff that fits, that just brings us so much joy. It seems like that's life. But that's so just happenstance. I don't know. Some people believe everything happens for a reason. I think we have greater influence over our lives, and I think we can intentionally introduce ourselves to things that will bring us joy and also will not bring us joy. But it's up to us to put ourselves in new and uncomfortable situations, because otherwise we're never going to find this stuff that we enjoy. Somebody introduced to me this idea of the surface area of luck and increasing the surface area of luck in our lives. I wholeheartedly believe in this. The amount of times that I've just ended up on a random encounter because of either talking to somebody or putting myself in a new situation, is incredible. People like talking to people, and the more we put ourselves into clubs, the more we put ourselves into new groups of people, the more we try new hobbies, the more jobs we like. The more things we try, I think the more we learn about ourselves. And uncomfortable is fantastic. Because even discomfort, even not enjoying things, gives us more data about who we are, what we like, and what we don't like. And even the things that we don't like, arguably, are more important because they steer us away, and steering away gets you a broader scope of the things that we might actually genuinely enjoy. But it seems like the later in life is when we set up roots, you get a sustainable job, we have families, and roots start to be planted. And if we never took the time to explore or figure out who the hell we are, I've heard too many stories of people waking up at 30, 40, 50 and just they can't take it anymore. Life, we're re-rolling the dice. And it seems like potentially either a divorce or they snap or I don't know, or they quit their job. Like, it seems like the body has a way of knowing not what it likes, but things it doesn't like. And if we keep forcing ourselves into these positions that we don't like, our body's going to retaliate. I have one friend, I just use this example because it just hits the nail on the head. And she was married for 10 years. And one day, it wasn't one day, it slowly built, but one day, she told me she snapped. She packed her shit and bought a one-way ticket to India. Then went on this meditation retreat. I hope she's chill with me sharing this story, because this blew my mind. And it seems like if we just force ourselves into discomfort over and over and over, eventually the body snaps. So if we don't intentionally, or we just end up uncomfortable and unhappy for a long period of time. I think we need to try things. I think we need to increase our surface area of luck. We need to increase the amount of times that we're uncomfortable, because then we find out where we actually are happy. Another story. So I was on this post graduation. We had time before work, and for about 2 months, me and my buddy went booling in Europe. And at one point, I was like, "Dude, we're trying something whack," and we both got accounts on it was Workaway or Woof, the worldwide online organic farming, where you can just people have all their farms listed and you can go work for them. I ended up on this farm in Estonia, working with this family, and turns out I hated it. I hated it. I was frolicking around Europe, and I ended up in Estonia, and I was there for maybe 2 weeks, and I hated it, dude. But it wasn't until I just had this whole life stripped from me that I realized what I actually wanted. I had this moment, this whole 2 weeks, I was just reflecting. I was like, dude, this is the moment I dreamed of. Graduating, going to Europe, and working with just out of my backpack and seeing where I ended up. And I was doing it. I had time, I had money, and I was pretty miserable. And I remember thinking like, okay, if this isn't it, what's it? What's it, dude? And I came up with 4 things. I was like, what am I missing right now that is making me feel so miserable? These are the things I came up with. Number 1, every day, I need time with my friends. I need time with the people that I care about, that I want to shoot the shit. I didn't have that. I was on this farm, and I was by myself with a couple of strangers. Number 2, I needed some growth in my life. I needed a skill I was working on. I needed to see improvement. I needed long-term progress of some sorts. Progress on some type of skill. And I was, I was power washing, I was welding, I was weed whacking, this random stuff. But it didn't feel like it was contributing to myself in the long term. It felt like just distraction. I was killing time. It's time with friends. I need to work on a skill. I wanted to learn something. Whether it was reading or listening to a podcast, or I realized that my brain has this insatiable desire to learn things. I wanted to learn things. And it was difficult for me to do that. And 4 was this sort of physical, whether it's sort of adrenaline, essentially, is what I stumbled upon. Whether it's rock climbing, whether it's skateboarding, whether it's skiing, whether it's... I need some sort of this physical aspect in my life of excitement, of just shit that makes me nervous, and something that's exciting. And these 4 things, these 4 things I realized, I didn't realize at the time, but it was what I was missing. I didn't have these things, and I felt like I was just wasting time. But if I didn't end up in a spot where those things were stripped from me for 2 weeks, I was just out there. If I didn't put myself in that position, or if I didn't end up in that that discomfort, I wouldn't have learned any of these. And I find that oftentimes the uncomfortable, the most worst parts of our lives seem like when we learn the most. There's this guy, Arthur Brooks, and he got this phenomenal podcast. And one thing he talks about is don't waste your suffering. He teaches this happiness class, I think, at Harvard. And he tells his students, whenever something that happens to you that bothers you, that you don't like, write it down, and then under that write 2 more blank lines. After 1 month, he says, what's one thing that you learned from this bad thing that happened to you? One thing you learned after a month. 3 months later, you fill out the 3rd line, and you write down one good thing that happened to you as a result of this bad thing. And I started doing this, just recently, but the premise of don't waste your suffering is phenomenal. I think the worst times in our lives are the things when we learn the most. And it's sort of that type 2 fun where it sucks in the moment, we want it to be over, but that's when it builds character. That's when you figure out who the hell you are, and that's when you figure out what the hell you want. When we're just coasting, when life's good, life's good. Who cares? Who bats an eye? But if we don't prepare ourselves for when shit hits the fan, shit's gonna hit the fan eventually. Whether we like it or not, I think life just has this fan of shit that is always being hit. It's just always going around, and there's always shit flying, and it's always hitting the fan. And if we don't choose our suffering, I think life chooses it for us. Exposure to randomness, trying new things, and it's up to us to figure out what our brain likes. Nobody else has the same brain as us, and nobody else operates the same, and nobody else can tell us what's inside. Leave with this final quote. I'd rather be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in the war. And, I hope that was useful.